We were a border state, which was of great importance, and Lincoln knew that. President Lincoln, he made the comment, and I quote, "I hope to have God on my side, but I must have Kentucky," unquote. And he knew that Kentucky was a very important state during this time, and wanted us to side with the Union side, of course. Of course, this was his birthplace and his wife's birthplace. Mary Todd was also born here in Kentucky. But Kentucky was, I believe, the only state that decided to remain neutral and did that at the beginning. Confederate Polk had a failed attempt at making Kentucky be a Confederate state. But after he failed at his attempt, legislature petitioned the Union Army for help. And Ulysses S. Grant was a very important general during that time for the Union Army in Kentucky. There was 13 battles fought in Kentucky. Many of them had to do with controlling the railroads, which we know was of great importance back then. The first battle was in Barberville in September of 1861. And the Confederates showed up to try to break up. They had heard the Unions had training camps set up, and they tried to break that up. And realized the trainees were there, and they got into a battle with some rebels. But the Confederates were not successful with that. Mill Springs was a bloody battle here in Kentucky, but I believe the bloodiest battle that Kentucky had during the Civil War time was in Perryville, and that happened on October 8th, 1862. History says there was over 38,000 men that fought in that battle. 6,000 were wounded or unaccounted for, and 1,400 deaths. The Confederates were led by Bragg, and they finally retreated through the treacherous Cumberland Gap. Lincoln was upset, actually the word was infuriated, later that Buell did not pursue Bragg and his men through the Cumberland Gap and do them more harm than they had already done. Buell was told by General Halleck that the president, and this was President Lincoln's words, I quote, "He does not understand why we cannot march as the enemy marches, live as he lives, and fight as he fights, unless we admit the inferiority of our troops and our generals," unquote. And that was the last of Buell being a general. In the spring of 1865, Kentucky's Confederacy totally did disappear. There was a lot of financial repercussions from the Civil War. Banks, railroads, manufacturing did well, but families did not do so well. There had been a lot of deaths of the soldiers. There were soldiers coming home that were wounded or had disabilities or psychological issues. Education was struggling. Many destroyed homes. When they returned home, their homes and farms were gone. It was a really hard time for families.